The Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations present at this time the first of a series of news broadcasts to be heard nightly 7 days a week at 8:55 o'clock Eastern Daylight Saving Time. Your news broadcaster and news analyst will be Elmer Davis, noted journalist and author, whose voice has already become familiar to Columbia's listeners through the stirring events of the past several weeks. Mr. Davis.
Today, the war is 2 weeks old. 2 weeks that have been a surprise to everybody except the German general staff and possibly even to them. That the Germans, unless much of their forces had to be diverted to meet British and French attacks, could beat the Poles was generally admitted. But nobody expected the Germans to get so far so soon. Things look a little better for the Poles this evening. The German attacks on Brest-Litovsk have so far failed to capture the city, and the Warsaw Radio reports that part of the Polish army that was trapped in the western provinces has broken through the German ring and joined the defenders of the capital. But there's another and wider German ring far to the east of Warsaw, a ring that will apparently be closed if Brest-Litovsk is taken. And it remains to be seen whether the great concentration of Polish troops in the capital will ever get out. In any case, some of the nations that have been watching from the sidelines seem to think that the Polish war is about over and are taking precautions so that, as the Moscow newspaper Pravda puts it, events shall not take them unawares. For 2 days now, we've been hearing talk from Moscow of the creation of new states in the east of Poland, which might serve as shock absorbers between Germany and Russia. But if a new Ukrainian republic is set up on present Polish territory, it would apparently be under German domination, for the Germans already hold half the land it would include. The Russians could hardly feel easy about that in view of Hitler's long-standing ambitions for the Russian Ukraine, which would be just over the border. Today, Russia called up another 500,000 conscripts, which will make a total of 4.5 million men under arms. It must be repeated that no such force would be needed for a new partition of Poland. Nobody but Joseph Stalin knows what Russia's policy is going to be in the near future. Possibly even he does not know, but is waiting to see how he can turn events to the best advantage for himself. But it seems likely that he too has been surprised, and not pleasantly, by the rapidity of the German conquest of Poland. Meanwhile, the Italian newspapers were saying yesterday, and saying it in editorials, remember, that couldn't have been published without government permission, couldn't have been published if they hadn't represented something that, at the moment at least, the government wanted the people to hear. They were saying that the war would end with German victory, that Italy too would attain her goals, and that these goals were Tunisia, Djibouti, and Suez, all of which could be attained, of course, only at the expense of France and England. And now this afternoon, the report, not yet official, but ascribed to usually unimpeachable sources, comes from Moscow that Russia and Japan may be getting together. An agreement is said to have been reached to stop the border skirmishing in the Far East. There's talk of a Russo-Japanese non-aggression pact inspired by German diplomacy, and a Tokyo newspaper reports that Russia will be asked to cut off the help it has been giving to China. Russia, you observed, is to be asked to give up, not Japan. If that report is correct, that is not very pleasant news for Mr. Stalin either. But Stalin can take it more easily than the French and British could take it. In the long run, it is hard to see how Russian and Japanese interests in the Far East can be reconciled. But that conflict can be put off a long time if they can both be satisfied at the cost of other powers. An agreement with Russia which gave Japan a free hand in China would be a terrific blow to British interests, and conceivably Stalin might feel that in times like these it is better to play safe, keep out of trouble, and see how the other powers come out before he commits himself. We don't know yet how much there is in this talk of a Russo-Japanese agreement. It was talked about a week or more ago, but it's talked about more confidently now, and the Italian papers are certainly stronger in support of Germany than at the outbreak of the war, which is to say that the first 2 weeks of the war have seen victories for German diplomacy as well as for German arms. In international affairs as well as in domestic affairs, Hitler has proved that nothing succeeds like success.
A 5-minute program of news and news analysis by Elmer Davis will be brought to you by Columbia and its affiliated stations nightly at 8:55 o'clock Eastern Daylight Saving Time. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System. 8